What was life like during the Depression?
Yeah, we were raised, like I say, in that little house, and as our sisters, older sisters, graduated school, they got jobs, and they started to provide. Everybody in the family provided for the subsistence of that family. So, older sister was the first older. She was the first one to be able to go to work. So when she went to work, and she had a payday, just like everybody else, a portion of that payday was laid on the table for the sustenance of the family. So every one of us that worked, when we started working, we took some of our money, our wages, and laid it on the table for taking care of the family. I graduated high school, and I was only 16 years old. Now, my first job, I made $7 a week for 44 hours work.
What was life like on the carrier ships?
We got in many fights. And life aboard carrier during wartime is not nice. Everything's structured. You have to visualize that you're living among about 4,000 men, and usually at night they darken, what they call darken ship. They close off anything that will show light on the outside, and they go from incandescent white lights to red lights, and so you'll show nothing as best as you can while the ship is on the sea, because the enemy has submarines and other airplanes up in the air too, so they didn't want us to contact us. So anyway, I was aboard that carrier for about 8 months. So during daylight hours, they open up the ship and you could be out there. Now, radar, as you've seen them today, we've gone to the moon. We didn't have such stuff. You were lucky if we had a smidgen, just a smidgen of radar at that time. We had a screen in which we'd see a little blip on it if you weren't too far away, and the weather had to be just about right. But there was always the threat of action. There was always the threat of plain old fire.
What were some accidents that occurred during the war?
Accidents aboard ship were the airplanes. Now we got, say, 4,000 men aboard this ship, and you have 85 airplanes. And these men have to take care of these airplanes, and they can't just sit there. These airplanes have to be moved around, and these airplanes have breakdowns and they have to be repaired. So these guys are working, and unfortunately, accidents happen. And there's been instances where we have what they call armament people who sit in the cockpit of the airplane or check the guns to see that the ammunition is properly loaded in the aircraft, and no electricity is near the aircraft. But even at that, every now and then you'll see or hear something go off, and it'll be a 50 caliber machine gun, and if there's anybody near it, you're either going to lose part of his life or he's going to lose his life, which happens many times. These airplanes are parked so close together more than once, and they had propellers, remember now, not jets, they had propellers. More than once at nighttime, dark time, daytime, close together, a man or several men walk into these propellers. We were trying to get off the ship one time, and my very best friend was just in front of me, and we were taking off, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning. We were going to go off and fight against the Japanese at Kwajalein at that time. And just as he got off the deck, the engine in the airplane quit. So he went right into the water. And of course, all our operations had to stop because there's nothing we could do. But they looked to try to find the pilot. And wouldn't you know it, they found the pilot. He got out of the airplane, and a destroyer was alongside, picked up the pilot, and then we transferred him onto the ship by another means. And he wound up fine. He flew the next day.
How were you picked to be one of the Blue Angels?
Now, to volunteer, you have to have time in the airplane, which at that time was the F-6F Hellcat, the airplane that was used in combat. You had to be a combat pilot. You should have been in combat or they didn't want to consider you. You had to be qualified in the airplane on carriers because there were other airplanes qualified with doing that. But the big kicker was you had to be a bachelor. Well, there were thousands of pilots, and most of them, when they came back, they had girlfriends and stuff. They got married. So that disqualified them from being a member of this flight demonstration team. But anyway, they got enough selectees of volunteers to do that. So then they took these names and went back to the headquarters and training command and said, okay, we'll pick 4 of them. So they picked 4, and I was one of them.
How did you come up with the name for the Blue Angels?
We all got orders up to Jacksonville, Florida, and that's the birthplace of what we later on called the Blue Angels. Well, the 4 of us were sitting in the stateroom talking about, 4 of us were sitting in the stateroom talking about it. In walks the 5th guy. We had a 5th guy then. He walks in with his New Yorker magazine. Now get this, a New Yorker magazine. And he comes in, he says, hey, I've got it. I said, you got what? And he had this magazine open. He's, look. He flips open and says, and here was about 1.5 inch tall, single column ad for a restaurant. And it was dining, cocktails, dinings, etc., called the Blue Angel. And we all agreed. You know, when we heard it, we all like, that's it. That's what we want. How do you like that? This Navy flight demonstration team, the Blue Angels, is named after a saloon.
What was your craziest experience while flying?
When you're flying in the Navy, they used to have a pay scale that since you were an aviator, you were incurring more risk of an accident, and so they insured you for more money, but you also paid more insurance premium for it. And yet, you had to fly so many hours a month to collect what they called flight pay. Well, now, I knew that since I'm going to this hospital, I couldn't get paid for flying because I'll be grounded, medically grounded for a month. So I went to the air station in El Centro, and I said, listen, I got to get 4 hours in today. I got to fly 4 hours a day. I was cheating, is what I was doing. So I got in this airplane. I begged and borrowed an airplane, and I said, I'll be down in 4 hours. So I took this fighter airplane up there, and I had on my dress, like a dress uniform, tie and everything on. And I get on this little old fighter airplane over there. And I'm flying around up there, and it's just time to come back, so I'm going to come back. Well, that airplane was a pre-World War II airplane, had a crank to crank your wheels up, to crank your wheels down. And the last 2 cranks on your wheel down meant that the airplane wheels were down and locked, but there was no indicator, no indicator. And to make my landing, and I'm sitting there fat, done, and happy, and I'm ready to get out of the airplane, but the airplane touches down the runway at El Centro. And I said, man, that's a beautiful landing, nice and soft, everything's nice. It was so soft that it never stopped. It just kept going down and down. Pretty soon I'm saying, I'm on the ground. I'm on fire. So sure enough, I look down there, and here's fire coming up this way, and I'm sliding on the belly of the airplane, and the airplane is totally on fire. Man, it's hot in here. And I see this fire, and I'm not quite stopped yet, but I have sense enough that I'm getting out of that airplane before it explodes, see? So I jump out of the airplane, it's sliding somewhat, and I go over the side of the airplane, I go down in a ditch down the way here. And the airplane burns. And I mean, it's burning, and my heart is going like so. And I'm saying, man, I'm going to get myself chewed out really good, because I was not supposed to fly. So, sure enough, the ambulance comes out and everything comes out, and they take me to the dispensary, the Navy dispensary there. That's the first thing you have to do. And the doctor's standing right there on the stoop, and he's looking at this flame and this smoke, and he says, well, you know, I guess we lost our pilot there. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I says, I'm the guy.